Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. And today it is June the 7th, and I am coming from my new space. This is the place that I am going to be permanently based out of for, I say permanently, but I go with God's flow. So for however long I'm here, I have signed a 12-month lease and I haven't quite decorated. So I'm using my own charts, which to me are probably the best decorations I could possibly use. But what I am excited about is being able to connect with each and every one of you, whether you're here present right now, you're going to come in later, you're going to watch this tomorrow, or maybe you'll watch this a year from now. We are in the midst of a great awakening. This is the year 2023, June 7th, 2023. We are in a process that is going to be clearly marked many years from now. When we look back in hindsight, we are going to see the decade of 2020 as the decade where humanity had to make a choice. We had to choose to follow God's will, or we're going to continue to follow the ego's will. There is absolutely no more sitting on the fence. We have got to make a decision. Are we going to follow truth or illusion? Are we going to continue living from love, or are we going to operate from lies, from fear? So the time is now to make a choice. And as we look back on this decade, the decade of 2020, again, clear vision, 2020, perfect vision. Either we utilize this decade to really see how humanity has been participating in a game of separation, in a game of competition, of haves and have-nots, of, frankly, accepting fear as a reality, versus is humanity prepared to accept love as our reality? Is humanity prepared to get transparent, to get honest? That requires the journey, the soul's journey, the journey to question all of our beliefs. This chart that I use, these charts I use in my classes. So those of you who've been in my classes are familiar with them. But we all come from the highest calibration of frequency. We all come from the highest possible level of love. This it doesn't get any higher than that. That's the realm of bliss. That's the realm of non-physical oneness with God. And little by little, we descend. Not only do we descend in one lifetime, do we descend, but lifetime after lifetime, we have been descending. However, many of us, because we are done with the game of the 3D world, once, when I was a child, there were games I used to play with my Barbie dolls all the time. I loved it. I probably there were 5-10 years of my life, maybe not 10, 5 to 7 years of my life, somewhere from about maybe 6 to 10, 12 years old. I loved my Barbies. I'm 61 years old. I don't play with Barbies anymore. So at some point, we put down the childish toys. Well, many of us have decided we don't want to play this game of separation. We don't want to play in competition. We don't want lies. We want to be transparent. We don't want to operate in anxiety and depression. We're done with that. Don't need to have that in our life. So what have we done? Little by little, we have been ascending in consciousness. What that means is we're willing to question our thoughts. Low vibrating thoughts perpetuate the separation, the fear, the anger, the anxiety. Well, if you know that you can choose between love and fear, between ego and God, which is symbolized in this other chart, when you understand that you're an energetic being, and when your chakras are operating in alignment with God, you are seeing things through the eyes of God. You're operating with God's will. You are definitely looking at the world through soul's vision. You are completely speaking truth. Your throat chakra will speak only truth because you have no fear. That's what we have to understand, that only those who have fear lie because they're scared. They don't want to be found out. They don't want to get in trouble, just like it was when we were children. I learned to lie to protect myself. I didn't lie because, oh, it felt so good. I lied because I didn't want to get in trouble, which felt so bad. So the ego learns to lie and it blocks love, it blocks truth, it blocks joy. So as we become more familiar with our who we are, energy, beings made of energy, every single one of us is nothing but pure consciousness. Whether you call it energy, you call it consciousness, you call it God, you call it love, it does not matter. We all come from non-physical. Non-physical is pure imagination in the mind of the creative source of all that is. So that mind that creates all that is creates you and me to express itself. Well, when we land on this planet, the 3D planet, when we incarnate into a physical reality experience, we begin to operate based on what is already there. We land and we observe, and we then express ourselves or suppress ourselves. If it's a safe environment, we feel safe to express. If it's an unsafe environment, we will suppress. So a truth is expressed, a lie is suppressing truth. Simple. There's no other way around it. When you're extending love, you are feeling safe, you are feeling connected, you understand the truth of who you are, you're feeling inspired. When you are not, then you are blocking that. You are holding that to yourself, which is why the ego is very selfish. It's all about me. Because when we don't speak the truth, we are holding it. We are lying. We're holding on to the truth and we're not sharing it with others unless there's something in it for me. So notice how we have to give rewards when, for example, we're trying to find, for a murder case, let's say, they offer a reward to find out the truth of who shot somebody. Well, then the truth comes out because the ego only speaks facts when it's in its best interest. So much of what's happening in the world today is humanity realizing we cannot continue being divided. If we're divided against our brothers and sisters, then we don't understand what we are. That sends us back to the beginning, to the power of awareness. Become empowered with awareness. Who are we? Well, all of us came from the highest frequency. So what are we? We are eternal brothers and sisters, holy brothers and sisters. And when we really get that that's what we are, then why are we battling each other? Why are we fighting each other? Why are we segregating into the Black Lives Matter or the LGBTQ, LMNOPQ plus? I can't keep up with all the letters that they keep adding to it. So why do we have to separate ourselves and have a pride week? You know that pride, when the ego uses pride, pride is what keeps us. It's a low frequency. It keeps us from moving beyond. However, pride also, because everything is a two-sided coin, pride is where we come to realize, you know what? I'm tired of being selfishly oriented and having pride in me and my special group. I'm going to start taking pride in finding the truth. Then that leads from pride, it leads us to courage. Courage is the next level up that says, I'm no longer interested in what's good for me. I'm going to be courageous to find out what else is there that I might be missing. So as this particular month is the month of pride around the world, for one particular group, we're missing the point. However, that group that continues to feel that they need to have this special time is, there was a time when coming out, speaking up was absolutely necessary because anybody who is different based on their sexual orientation, based, whatever they want to do with their gender, if they want to change it, they want to be transition to a different, that is absolutely okay. They are absolutely allowed to have that experience if they want to, because they're creators of their own reality. But what happens with the ego is that the ego never allows for things to come into balance. So when it became, I believe that it became law, once it became acceptable to allow that particular segment of the population. I know I have a gay sister. When it became okay for her to be able to come out and express herself, I mean, what a wonderful thing. So yes, it's a wonderful thing. But when the pendulum swings to the other side with pride, it's all about me, then it becomes about, I'm going to shove my opinion down your throat. And if you don't like it, then you're a bigot, or you're a homophobe, or you're a racist, or you're, whatever long list of things to attack the other side. That swinging of the pendulum when we are in egoic pride keeps us from ever finding the truth of who we are. And the truth of who we are is that we're equal. And not only are we equal, created by God that way universally, but even in the United States, our Constitution states that all men are created equal. All men and women are created equal. So why should one group have all this extra fanfare? If we treat them equally as everybody, then everybody is the same. And that's what we want to go for. That is what we are awakening to. 2020 is the decade to see clearly. Don't be favoring one side, because if you do, their pride is going to take them to the other side, and then they're going to think that they have the right to bash everybody else. So first, they don't want to be bashed. They want to be seen as equal. Then they become special, and then they want to be superior. We will not get out of this nonsense of the pendulum swinging, the ego pendulum swinging, until we acknowledge the equality of all beings. So when we look at A Course in Miracles, the Course in Miracles is training our mind to understand, how did we descend from high frequency consciousness? And what that means, if this is new to you, high frequency means truth. You're closer to the truth. Low frequency is how far away from the truth are you, which means you have to contract, you have to lie, you have to believe things that are absolutely not true. Not only not true according to even our Constitution, that we're created equal, but not true according to God, who makes all of us in its image, meaning which one of us is not absolutely equal to God? Course in Miracles has taught me that God, the humbleness of God is what has helped inspire me into my own humbleness. And that humbleness is coming from God, states that God wants us to call it friend. God is only interested in us extending what makes us happy, being our joyful selves, extending our ideas, our creativity to expand the kingdom. Course in Miracles says that the only difference between us and God is that God created us. That's it. That's it. Think about it. God created us. That means we can't create God. So we cannot be more powerful than God. But God created us in its image. God created us equal to it, gave us the exact same power to create. Therefore, if God gave us power to create, and it wills for us to be happy, and the only way we're going to be happy is if we're honest and if we share what excites us, what inspires us, what brings us joy, then thank goodness God created us and we can't create God, because if we can create God and we want to create more gods, we end up in the mess that the ego has created for us. Now, what I mean by that is when we use the power of God unaware that we are creating, we're really making a mess out of things. The ego thinks, oh yeah, I'm in charge, I'm boss, I get to write these laws and these rules and regulations, and I'm the head of the company, and I'm the head of the country, and I'm the head of the World Economic Forum, and I'm the one in charge, and I have more money than you, so I get to decide. Well, when we're operating with that level of untruth, that we get to make whatever it is that we want and override God's rules. Notice how there's no humbleness in that. Well, I'm better than God. I know more than God. We will inevitably do something that is going to be laced with lies. It's going to be laced with inequality, meaning fear is going to be part of it. That's just the way it's going to be, because the ego is a block to God. The ego is like the clouds in the sky that blocks the light. Yesterday was started off a beautiful sunny morning here. We were out and about, went on a beautiful hike, and then all of a sudden the dark clouds came in. And as we're walking home, it starts raining. Well, when the dark clouds came through, we couldn't see the rays of the sun. It just got really dark, but the sun didn't stop shining. God doesn't stop shining just because the ego makes up lies, because the ego clouds our perception with dark thoughts. A thought is dark when it is selfish. When it is selfish, when it is about lies, it is always going to be dark, because in order to have a selfish thought that it's all about me, I have to block the truth that it's a world of we. So for me to believe the lies, I have to block the truth. That means I've got to make the truth wrong. Oh, those people are conspiracy theorists because they're speaking things that I don't want you to know about. We got to censor them. Anybody who speaks truth, do you realize they don't have to censor anybody, because you don't need to defend truth. In our defenselessness, our safety lies. That's why people who speak truth and operate from equality do not need specialness. They do not need to be treated in any way other than exactly how everybody should be treated. Now, because humanity operates in duality, we still have to, even those who espouse to believe in the Constitution and believe in equality, even some within that realm still believe that some have the right and they should have a say versus others. So there's still a disparity, even among those who believe in the Constitution. That is because the ego is still active. The ego may know some truth, but it's selective about certain truths. So much work is still happening. And in this decade of revealing that which has been hidden for so long, we are going to have to do as within, so without. Within, we need to look at the places where we have lied to ourselves. Because once we can begin to see how we lie to ourselves, and these lies, even though they appear to be not such a big deal when we're children, because people can look at this as, oh, the spiritual journey. I mean, what's the point of it? So you grow up thinking you're not lovable, you're not good enough. So what? Just change your mind and move on. Well, yes, that would be easy if we could do it that way. However, when we create such a big block to who we are, that I'm not lovable, that I'm not good enough, that I am not wanted, whatever those stories are, for a lifetime that we are descending, not to mention lifetimes of believing that, we are perpetuating a story of disempowerment that allows us to become victims. And this is what's so key to understand right now as we look at what's happening in the world. I'm gonna guess probably over 95%, if not more, but I'll just be gracious here and stop at 95. 95% of humanity operates from a victim mentality, meaning because we didn't understand our value when we were little, our mind got conditioned to believe in external authorities that other people got to decide if we're good or bad, naughty or nice. And we grow up with this sense of victimhood that right from the get-go, I didn't get the right parents, I didn't get the right schooling, I didn't get the right boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, I didn't get the right opportunities. So there's this sense of victimhood that even if we are not consciously aware of it, is operating in the background. Now, the other 5% grew up with a sense of entitlement, of a sense of basically being a bully. But that's only possible because that's the opposite side of the coin. So for those who grow up to become bullies, they were basically victimized as children in terms of we're not allowed to have their own experience as a child because the parents had an idea of what was supposed to be for them. When you look at lineages of leaders in the world, and I'm going to use quotes, air quotes for leaders, when you have people who become tyrants, who become dictators, who become even heads of organizations that operate from pride, it's all about me, they become bullies. And what happens is their continued generations, that's why we listen to information about lineages like the Rothschilds, the Soros family. And of course, I can't think of all the ones that I would like to share with you. but there are many lineages of, I mean, go back into the what do you call that, monarchy, kings and queens within the same lineage, whether it's their children or their cousins, nieces, nephews, they are raised in a, you don't get to be who you want to be because you're a king, you're the son of a king, you're the daughter of a queen, you're going to be this. So basically, there's a level of victimization that props them up into thinking that they're better than, and that gives them permission to then become a bully. So 5% roughly that operate as bullies, 95% of humanity that operates as victims, guess what happens? Of course, New World Order, world dominance. Humanity has little by little been conditioned into believing that they are less than those rulers, that some are elected, some are selected, some make themselves rulers. Well, that's because internally we don't know who we are. As within, so without. The only way externally one can be a victim is if internally you don't know who you are. If internally you are told, or you experience from the moment that you are born, or even in the womb, that you are unwanted, well, that sets you up for this idea of victimization. And what is a victim going to do? Well, they're going to set things up so that they do not get hurt. They're going to do whatever they can to feather their nest to make sure that everything is okay because it wasn't done for them. So this false sense of there's something wrong with me leads us into manipulation and lying and overachievement. And there's nothing wrong with achieving as much as one wants to achieve, but when it is done from the ego to get something, to protect, to defend, to define yourself in a way that you want the world to see you. So basically it's a fuck you to mom and dad. You didn't love me enough, and look, and now I've become a successful person. That attitude comes from a victim energy. Where's the victim? Where's the bully energy? Right down here. When we operate from a consciousness of equality, what we do is never done with the intent to manipulate how other people see us. So humanity is waking up to the way that we have been manipulated by others, because internally we don't know who we are, and we've allowed ourselves to be manipulated because we're looking for safety outside of ourselves. We're looking for approval outside of ourselves because we don't know who we are. To know who we are is to accept that we're made in the image of a creator to create. Not a single one of us enters into this human expression without a sense of joy, a sense of creativity, a sense of wonder, a sense of curiosity. Look at any little child. They express until they learn to suppress. They express until they learn that their joy, their excitement bothers other people. Then they begin to suppress it and learn that, well, if I suppress my joy, I can manipulate mom's attitude towards me. If I suppress or I lie and don't let dad know what really happened in school today, then I can manipulate dad's behavior. Dad's not going to react if I lie. Oh, then the teacher won't get mad at me if I lie and say the dog ate my homework because I never actually did it. So at a very young age, we learn to lie and manipulate. Look at politics. A lot of lying and manipulation, as within, so without. Politicians are nothing more than humans at operating. Well, let me be more specific. Don't want to do a blanket statement. Not all politicians operate only from their ego. Many operate only from their ego because they're operating at the level of pride. But when you meet, and there are some out there, politicians who are coming from their heart, they are doing everything that they can, using the positions that they have for the greater good for all. They want equality. They want the laws that are, be it the Constitution or even God's laws, to be adhered to. Well, we do have people in positions of power that really are in service to the greater good, but it's still the minority, because the majority of us are still not aware of our value. And when we're not aware of our value, we are being represented equally. When more of us find our value, more of us will enter into positions of leadership, because we will not tolerate the treatment of anybody in any way other than exactly as the Creator intended for it to be. This is why so many people through this great awakening are serving, are taking on positions of leadership and serving in politics, serving in corporations, becoming very active vocally in school boards and what have you, because as within, so without. So the outer world is shifting, albeit slowly, because our own internal journey is a slow process. I was sharing with one of you right before we started the recording that, my journey has been a 20-year journey of waking up. And I spent almost 10 years, right around there, give or take a year or two, almost 10 years of my journey was spent in what we were referring to as the razor's edge, meaning I knew that I am a child of God. I knew truth. I knew I could choose love over fear, but I wasn't practiced yet in doing it consistently. So for about 10 years of my journey, so let me put this in context, 20-year journey. The first 5 years, I was just in the curiosity stage, learning. I was absolutely ravenous when it came to books, to workshops. I couldn't get enough of the truth that was activating it within me. It's almost as if every time I read a book or went to a workshop or listened to a talk or watched a YouTube that was saying truth, it's like it was a tuning fork and I was getting tuned or calibrating myself to the truth. So I was beginning to open up and expand my mind to that which I had been closed down from. So I'm hearing truth, I'm learning truth, and I'm little by little realizing, oh, wow, there's so much more. Well, that's typically the beginning of the journey. For most people, that can take a lifetime. Then for me, the next thing that came is what happens, what we all have to go through. And that's looking at the ego, looking at the stories of disempowerment. Where did my beliefs come from? And that was a good 10 years of looking at my beliefs, looking at why I believe what I believe. Why did I manipulate? Why did I feel like a victim? Why did I feel like a bully? Those beliefs then needed to be looked at. So for a period of 10 years, it was a looking at lies and truths and choosing. And I couldn't always choose truth. I couldn't always choose love because I had a momentum of righteousness from my ego. And I couldn't always override my ego's need to be right with what was true. But then came, the last 10 or last 5 years, do the math, 5, 10 is 15 and 5 more. So the last 5 years, I have just been settling into the deliciousness of being at peace inside. I went through 10 years of going back and forth until, I crossed that bridge to the point where I was grounded on the far side of the bridge closest to God. So didn't have to have anxiety, didn't have to be confused, but I needed to continue the process of being vigilant for only God. And that's what's been happening the last 5 years, which is why when you get clear about God's truth, then you can be in the world and not of it. Before, I was in the world trying to deal with everything that was coming at me. Then you get to begin to observe the world and realize, oh, wow, everybody goes through the same process. So the compassion for all beings becomes very evident, because who am I to judge anybody else when we're all brothers and sisters doing the best that we can with what we've got? So I don't waste my time judging, because to judge, then I have to lower my frequency. I need to make myself tight and tense. I need to make myself uncomfortable. And I really like feeling peaceful. And peace means I accept all things as they are. So as I observe what's happening in the world today, I can observe it from a very peaceful place. Everybody's doing the best that they can, but I have the power of awareness. I'm aware who's operating as a victim and a bully, and who is moving through the layers of consciousness, who is wanting to awaken. Many. The Great Awakening is because many, in the millions, if not a billion, by the time it's all said and done, by the end of this decade, if not a billion, maybe even 2 billion, are going to be able to see through the lies that has been perpetrated on humanity, because We have been operating with one of the biggest lies ever. Course in Miracles says that there is one problem, the authority problem. Because we don't understand our inner authority, we have fallen for external authorities. Those external authorities who pridefully become bullies need victims to do what they say. So that's why the majority of humanity has been operating as a victim at some level. Even though we didn't know we were victims, because it appeared, especially in the West, that we were free, we in truth did not understand that when we follow the rules, man-made rules of others who have agendas, why isn't everything in the government transparent? Why can't we see everything that is happening there? Why do these representatives of the people have to meet in secret? Well, we used to be told, well, we got to stay in secret because we can't let our enemies know what's going on. Why do we have enemies? If we are intelligent beings and we can communicate and we can collaborate and co-create, why would there be enemies? Well, really, the enemies that they don't want to find out what's going on is the people, because those who believe that they are in charge, their enemies become those who they're trying to control, because they don't want those who they're trying to control to know what's going on. Why? Because they're speaking lies and they don't want us to hear it. So one who wakes up and discovers the truth of who they are, we can handle the truth. We don't need to be lied to. As a matter of fact, we want the truth. We want transparency, because then if there are issues, then we can address them and correct them. Then we can abolish the government that is not serving us. We can change and elect somebody else that would be a better representative. We would be able to take care of things just as we would in our own personal life. When you run a business or when you work for a corporation, let's say you're a manager or you're the owner, it doesn't matter. You want to know the truth. You want to know where there are weak spots so that you can make corrections and change things. Truth is a good thing. Truth is our ally. That is why when we move to a lesson like we are in now, still in chapter 30, which is titled The New Beginning, when we look at that and we're looking at section number 2, which is called Freedom of Will, well, freedom of will tells us that we do not understand that to oppose our truth is to fight ourselves. We do not understand that to oppose God is to fight ourselves. So if God created all of us equal and created us to co-create, then why are we not operating as equals? Why do we have hierarchies? Why do we have haves and have-nots? Now, there is nothing wrong with somebody who knows a little bit more, who maybe is passionate about leading, to have a position of leadership, and those who are happier in the doing, who are happier in the the day-to-day tasks, well, let them be there. But if there is full transparency, because we treat each other as equal brothers and sisters, we would all get along. There would be no haves and have-nots. There would be no hierarchy. We would all honor the divinity, the magnificence, the equality of every single brother and sister. So we are being invited. We are being invited through this great awakening to take complete responsibility for what's going on inside, because what is within us gets projected out there. If I feel like a victim, well, I'm going to have a bully who's going to want to control me. And this world has been set up to value money over truth, because we can only have one master. It's either going to be God or it's going to be money. So when we value money and people move to positions of power and leadership that are bullies, guess what they do? They utilize their money to control the masses, and money will never be, whatever amount they have will never be enough. They will not stop until they have it all. That's why it's taken thousands of years, but little by little by little, we are being moved to this new world order so that only very few get to dictate what happens to the whole. Well, let's go back to the conversation at the beginning. The LGBTQP, LMNOP crowd, plus that particular crowd had to fight to have a voice. But once they got their voice, they didn't stop, then they needed to become special. Same thing, because it's ego. Everybody's voice should matter. In an age-appropriate way, everybody's voice matters. Now, if my 2-year-old grandson tells me that he wants to get a gun, I'm going to say no. So if my 2-year-old grandson tells me he wants to have a sex change, I'm going to say no. So are his parents. By the way, I don't want you to think that I'm the only one making decisions for my grandson's life. But there are things that are age appropriate. We don't let people vote until they're 18. We don't let people drink until they're 18. Why would we let them mutilate their bodies and totally, completely change, do something that's irreversible until they have at least some maturity to make those decisions? Well, when we start giving special treatment to one group over another, inevitably, if there's money involved, and there's a lot of money in these surgeries, in these hormone blockers and things like that, those who are valuing money, who operate from pride and are the bullies in charge, are going to need some victims to follow in line. This is why we need to wake up. We need to see that we can no longer continue to just focus on me and not care about what's happening in the world. Because when we give that much power away to a few to control the many, we are going to be part of the many who will eventually end up being controlled. So you can't be a lone ranger out here. You've got to do the work that is required to find your voice, find that you matter, discover the truth that you are supposed to speak from, because you're aligning with God's will. And when you align with God's will, you're only going to be bringing love and joy and uplifting all of humanity. So the last 5 years of my life has been to get really clear about the fact that I don't need to get people to like me, because it doesn't matter to me anymore. I am not here to make sure that I become successful and it's all about me. I am here to do God's will. Free will here is that I have decided to no longer oppose myself. I have decided to fully accept what God says is possible for me. And what is possible for me is to use my voice with all the awareness that I have gleaned, with the understanding of how the mind works, to utilize my knowledge in service to the greater good for all. So let's read in paragraph number 3 in Freedom section 2, called Freedom of Will, in chapter 30. So look once again upon your enemy, the one you choose to hate instead of love. Meaning, we've got to look at all of our brothers and sisters that we have decided to hate because they didn't do me right. They didn't give me what I wanted. They didn't promote me. They didn't, they left me. They cheated on me, whatever that might be. We need to look upon those that we call enemy, the one that we choose to hate instead of love. Because if we're hating on anybody, if we're fearing on anybody, we are strengthening the ego. Until love is all that we offer, unconditional love is all that we offer, we are not strengthening our allegiance to God. We're not vigilant for only the truth. All right, so for thus was hatred born into the world, and thus the rule of fear established there. This is something that is so important that we understand. Thus was hatred born into the world. This world that God created, this planet, did not have hatred until it was born into the world. How is hatred born into the world? Through the birth of the ego. When we begin to see that we are separate from others and the mind thinks that that is dangerous, we are allowing the birth of the ego that goes into self-protection. So for me to protect myself, I must think that there's somebody out there that can hurt me. If I believe that somebody can hurt me, then that gives me permission to hate. That gives me permission to fear. So hatred was born into the world because we looked upon others as enemies. We saw them as threats. And the only reason we can see them as threats is because we didn't have conscious training to help us understand that we are all brothers and sisters. We are all one. So humanity is waking up so more people can become conscious and raise the future generations consciously. So as humanity raises in frequency, and those new parents are at that higher frequency, even if it takes generations, well, children will not go below their parents' frequency. Children always remain higher than their parents' frequency. The parents go to the lower frequency and pull their children down. I know it happened to me with my parents, and I did it to my kids. But the child that is acknowledged for being a child of God, equal and honored for their creativity, their own ideas, not institutionalized into school systems and other religious systems and the government laws that says that you are less than. When we raise a child to remind them of the truth of who they are, they stay at a frequency that is consistent, absolutely consistent with the truth of God. So the world that God made for us, the planet that God gifted us, eventually is going to be completely cleaned up of lies and deceptions and ego low frequency. Why? Because when there is no longer hatred within ourselves, beliefs that I'm not good enough, because when you believe that you're not good enough and you're not lovable, you're hating on yourself, because you're believing things that are not true. Just because somebody else thought that, just because somebody else did something, doesn't mean that that's your truth. So when you come into the truth of who you are and you remember who you are, you won't have an enemy outside, because you'll realize we're all one. Just as Jesus didn't need to attack those who wanted to crucify him, because they were not his enemies. In his heart, they were his brothers and sisters. He forgave them. They didn't know what they were doing. He's operating at a high frequency. They're operating at a low frequency. He's in the world and not of it. He knows these people don't know what they're doing. Why am I going to judge them? Why am I going to show them anything other than love? Let me love them enough to say, I forgive you. You don't really know what you're doing. So the hatred that was born in the world that Jesus was born in, Jesus was not operating from that hatred. Jesus was birthing more love into the world. So the establishment of fear is only possible when we allow the ego to rule the world. When you connect the two, you realize, oh, okay, that's what it means. I got to be the change I want to see in the world. So 8 billion people need to do the work of coming inside, finding their voice. And when they find their voice, that 95% is going to say no to the 5% who's attempting to control them, because they will realize, wait a second, why do you get to tell me what to do when we're all one? Why do you get to be my authority when my inner authority is God within? And I can listen to that. I can choose to obey God within. And if we all obey God within each and every one of us is going to tell us the same thing. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God. Collaborate, co-create, go have fun and be happy. Go have fun and be happy. Do what makes you excited. Do what brings you joy. That will be the common message for everyone that decides to follow God's will, because we are free of will to choose with the ego, the lies that have been birthed in this world, or to follow God's laws. Sentence number 3 says, now hear God speak to you through him who is his voice and yours as well, reminding you that it is not your will to hate and be a prisoner to fear, a slave to death, a little creature with a little life. Boy, is that statement packed with powerful information that is so relevant to what is happening today. Let's break it down. Now hear God speak. When you stop listening to the ego, when you decide, you know what, I'm done hating people. When you make the decision, I'm done with inequality. I'm done with trying to prove myself. I'm done with attacking others who don't, honor me. I'm going to hear God. So now you hear God speak to you through him, who is his voice and yours as well. That voice is your intuitive knowingness. That voice is, as the Course in Miracles calls it, the Holy Spirit. That voice is the part in you that activates joy, activates peace, activates collaboration, intuition, Holy Spirit. It doesn't matter what you call it. That knowingness, gut feel, that is God communicating with us, reminding you that it is not your will to hate and be a prisoner to fear. God does not want us to fear. God wants us to shine our light and not get distracted by the clouds of the ego. Those are blocks to the truth. Those are lies, those are deceptions, those are distortions. God wants us to feel free to be ourselves because we're all created equal. But you cannot be free to be yourself until you honor everybody's freedom. That is why this whole pride thing is so out of control, because the ego took over. In the beginning, these people who felt that they were different because of their sexual orientation, who wanted equality, that was coming from the Holy Spirit in them. They deserve to be treated equal. So what if you're a male and you prefer, you feel attracted to male? So what? That doesn't mean that there's anything, that should be judged about you. Love is love is love is love. That is so much of what humanity has to understand, that who we choose to be intimate with is none of anybody's business. What is not okay is to create a specialness out of one group that thinks one way and then ram that down everybody else's throat, because then that's not equality. That is not to be honoring of differences. And humanity has this all backwards. So one of the things that is absolutely insane is, obviously, it's insane that we even had slavery. It is insane that so many African Americans were enslaved, but it is also insane that so many Irish people were enslaved. I know my family, part of my lineage, which I don't really talk about it a whole lot, but on my father's side, my grandmother is Irish, which is one of the places where my little grandson gets his red hair. My grandmother, Irish grandmother, Hannah O'Driscoll, doesn't get any more Irish than that. She came from a lineage of people who were part of the Irish slaves that barely had potatoes to eat, the whole potato famine. So it is not okay to have Black slaves. It is not okay to have white slaves. It is not okay to have a child as a slave, a woman as a slave, anybody as a slave. So when we utilize the story, the history of this country, specifically the United States of America, and we had Black slavery, for us to be able to heal and move beyond that, we need to acknowledge that there was a time when there was whites had privileges that Blacks didn't have. However, when that is seen and acknowledged and we atone for it, simply forgiving those who knew not what they were doing. That's all we have to do. Once you forgive in your heart that you participated in something that oppressed somebody else, you have atoned for that error. You have cleansed yourself of that error. Now the pendulum is swinging to where a group, and not necessarily African Americans, a lot of these groups are primarily white, who are promoting this agenda in schools now, and actually in corporations, where now we need to make sure that the whites feel guilty for what they did, that the whites understand how bad they are. How does that clear the frequency of guilt? How does that clear the frequency of wrongdoing? It doesn't. It just swings the pendulum to the other side, and it perpetuates. So if we have a whole bunch of white people now going, oh yeah, I should feel bad for what I did, how does that fix anything? Did the Blacks want to have their voice to acknowledge, hey, this is not okay? Absolutely. God wants you to speak your truth. Do the whites get to say, I am so sorry I had, that's part of the lineage. That was something that happened generations ago, and I'm sorry that happened. Today, how can we ensure equality? Not by judging and blaming the other side. It is just not going to end. Well, part of what we're waking up to is that those who are in control understand that if they keep the pendulum swinging, if it's not about women's liberation, then next is going to be men's liberation. Why? Because if you haven't noticed lately, men are treated like they're some kind of bunch of bumbling idiots. Turn on any TV show, watch just about any movie. Most of the men are idiots, with women being superior. Why? Because we've been elevating the women After years of the women being suppressed, and instead of saying, finally, we're all equal, well, we elevate one group and then we can bash the other group. And then that gives us a couple of decades of instability and conflict and need for more rules and regulations. Ay, 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 ay. We can't get off of the insanity of the ego's merry-go-round until we acknowledge equality, and all of us that wake up stand for that equality for all. For all. Here is why. If you don't do that, that hate that you carry in your heart for the other ones, that is going to make you a prisoner to fear, a slave to death. What slave to death means is that you're literally dead inside and fearful that you're going to be dead outside. Inside, you are not feeling the life force in you inspiring you because you're too afraid to speak your voice. You're too afraid about what people think. You're too afraid about what's going to get taken from you. You're living in a selfish world about what you could lose, and you have nothing to give. So you don't feel alive. And that's where sense of loneliness, sense of despair, sense of not mattering or not being heard comes from, because the life force that wants to express itself through you can only do so when you allow it. And for you to allow it, you can't be afraid of dying. You've got to be committed to living fully, even if it means that you might lose your life for your cause, just as Jesus did, just as so many of our founding fathers did in the United States. Because when you stand for the truth and you know you're eternal, you do not have fear. So we have been living like a little creature with a little life because we're operating out of protecting my own little house, my own little belongings, the things that I accumulate that give me a sense of who I am. That has become who we think we are, and it has blocked us from remembering the truth of our eternal self. When we know that we're eternal, there is nothing we need to be attached to, because we know we're here temporarily having a human experience. We're going to come, we're going to go, things are going to move, there's going to be earthquakes, there's going to be things that are going to change until such time that this planet is returned to its original purpose, which is to be paradise, to be the Garden of Eden, to be a place where all beings can roam freely. So much so that Adam and Eve, the example of total complete freedom, didn't even need clothes. They didn't need to own anything. They didn't need to have stuff because they were free to just be themselves. Now, I'm not saying that we all have to go naked to show how enlightened we are, but this attachment to stuff keeps us in a state of protecting our own little, corner of the world that we can't step in to be a voice unto the world for the greater good of all. Sentence number 4 says, your will is boundless. It is not your will to be bound. God created us totally, completely free. God did not create us to live in fear. However, because we don't understand God's will, we operate from the ego's will. And where do we learn the ego's will? From those who conditioned us when we were young, by those and those people were conditioned by their parents and before. This is why this is a journey to go back the hundreds, thousands of years to find out, where did we begin this whole story that, as it says right here, gave birth to hatred in the world, gave birth to the ego in the world. Well, when we go back far enough in time, when we really become curious and study history, we will see. But of course, it's hard to find real history because history is written by those who are controlling things. But if you do go far enough, you will find it because it's everywhere. The truth cannot be suppressed forever. We begin to discover, oh, a lot of these things were made up. So the monarchies, that was made up. God created us equal, didn't create anybody in charge of anybody else. The haves and have-nots, the lineages with all the money, that's made up. God didn't create anybody with more than another. God gave us plenty for us to be able to share, to collaborate and co-create. So where did this divisiveness get created, we got to go to the point of origin. All of us need to be educated in the truth. And when we see the truth, we can forgive it. And then we say, okay, no more of separation and divisiveness. Now, what do we do to ensure equality? What do we do to ensure that all beings are given the same opportunity? And everybody will rise to whatever level of success they want to rise, but they will do so when no obstacles are placed in their way. Some will rise to incredible wealth, some don't need it. And that's okay. But when those who are wealthy are not wealthy because they were given a special treatment, then those who may not have as much because they don't need it, we're not going to have jealousy. We're not going to have greed. We're not going to have anybody trying to take from others when there becomes a awareness that we're all created equal. All right. Then when we know our equality and we connect with God inside, of course, we have to undo all the lies that religion has taught us. Then we become boundless. Then there is no limit to the joy, the fun that we can do. So what lies in you has joined with God himself in all creation's birth. When you allow your truth to awaken, you're only going to join with God. What else are you going to join with? It's either God or ego, and you're undoing ego. What's left? God. What does that mean? Joy, peace, bliss, creativity, collaboration, cooperation, all of those high vibing experiences is all that is left when you remove the blocks to it. The sun is all that is left when the clouds dissipate. The clouds is the darkness of the ego. The sun is going to be there. It's going to be shining through you. This is why we become enlightened. We return to the light shining through us because we lighten up. We become joyful, lighter, less dense, less needing to hold on to stuff. If you want to test how free you are, go find something that it's a possession that you have that you really prize and give it away. And then you'll see, oh, I can't live without this thing. Oh my goodness. Then you're going to see where your values are. You're going to see why you value external things is because you don't value fully yet the freedom inside. That's how we are all going to discover where the work is left for us to do. We are going to purify our connections to the ego when we face those connections. And the only way to face them is by a willingness to let go of things. When you're willing to let go of and surrender and allow what is, then you discover where you still are tethered to what the outer world of materialness is all about, because the outer world teaches us to value money, which is why the few that control want it all. They want peace. They're not out there advocating for peace. I want to get all the peace for me. No, they advocate for war because war makes money, and they want money because they value money over God. And what do you do with money? You buy and acquire stuff. So they are valuing what is physical. If you value what is physical, then you have become a victim to that game. And nothing wrong with that. Just the awareness, the honesty, the integrity, speak the truth that will eventually set you free. So it goes on to say, remember him who has created you and through your will created everything. Through your will, meaning our desire. When we incarnated, when we wanted to have this human experience, we desired a community to do this with. That God wanted to experience itself through all of the different billions of beings that are so different and diverse. Why? Because one wants to be a cook, one wants to be the one that eats, one wants to grow the fruits and vegetables, one loves to wash the dishes, one wants to own the restaurant, one wants to do the marketing for it, one wants to do the signs, the signage that goes outside. All of us have different things that we want to do. So we birthed through the process of creation an infinite array of beings to have these experiences with. Not to compete and hurt each other, but to collaborate and have fun with one another, each doing something different, having a good time, contributing to the greater good for all. Sentence 7. not one created thing, but gives you thanks, for it is by your will that it was born. So if you love to sing, your will to sing birthed those who want to hear the songs, those who want to play the music, those who want to have, own the stadiums, clean the stadiums, provide soft drinks at the stadium, market the stadium. For you to have the opportunity to be a singer and to have your music heard around the world and be played on the radio, we need all those people to do those parts. So from our desire to express ourselves has been born an infinite number of players. That's what the co-creation is all about. But because we went into competition based on who makes the most, based on who has the most power, we have literally turned this game into a hell. So it's time to make the game fun again. But to make the game fun again, you got to come inside, find your truth, realize what happened to you, wake up, move past your egoic pride, have the courage to begin to question things. And to question things, that means you are giving up your fear of external authorities. And when you find your truth, you don't care if you die for it, because you know you're eternal and you cannot end. You're eternal. That means you will never, ever end. So sentence number 8, this is the last sentence, says, no light of heaven shines except for you, for it was set in heaven by your will. This means that we are learning what Jesus said, I and the Father are one. When we acknowledge that God created us as expressions of itself to bring about different things, to bring about an infinite array of possibilities. When I accept that God and I are one, God wanted to experience itself as a mother, as a woman born in this particular century, as a woman who would come to discover the truth of who she is now, who had 3 children, who has had the passions that I have, who enjoys dancing, who enjoys gardening, who enjoys cooking. Then in my desire for that kind of life, I set in motion so many bright lights on this planet. I set in motion the husbands that would be part of my journey, the children, the friends, the clients, the students, the nursery owners who grew the plants that I eventually got to plant. I understand my role in all of it. There are not separate people out there. There is a projection from within for an experience that I want to have. And when I take full responsibility that the whole world is there to give me the ability to be me, then my job is to be me fully and appreciate all of the participants in my movie, all of these characters, all of these extras, all of these beautiful sets that get to give Laina's life. Then my work is to enjoy it because I willed to have a human experience. The script was written before I was born. I was going to be born to the family that I was born to. I was going to be conditioned by what they already knew. That was a given. However, I was also given free will to begin the process of ascension, to begin to move through the conditioning until I returned myself to the truth of who I am, meaning I needed to train my mind to not think with the ego and open up my chakra system, activate the energy, the frequency of who I am, so I could rise into the frequency that allows me to be a loving being that is not here to hurt anybody, to hate anybody, but it is here to uplift and to bring joy to the world. That is our role. That is our purpose. That is our will before we incarnated. We are waking up to remembering that is our will so that we can bring that heaven to earth. Because when we operate with the truth in our hearts, we will absolutely change this world from one of greed and lies and selfishness, basically hate, to one that is heaven, of truth, of transparency, of collaboration, of joy. We have to first become the change we want to see in the world, and then we will attract those who want to play that game. For that to become a reality, we must disconnect, unplug, untether ourselves from the rules that the outside has authority over us. We've got to become our own inner authority so we can align with God as our ultimate authority. So that's the transmission for today. That feels so wonderful, so amazing. Thank you so much for being here. At 11:11, the sign of illumination, we complete this transmission. How exciting. Thank you for being here. Because as always, where two or more gathered, these transmissions flow because they are loving. They always come from a place of love to teach me. Hopefully you get a nugget or two, and all of us become elevated through these experiences. So if anybody wants to share any nugget that you might have received, great. If not, we will conclude and we come back next Wednesday, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And this is episode 108. It's just always so exciting when we can do these episodes for all these years. I don't get tired of it because it just leaves me buzzing with high frequency all day long. So, all right. Anybody want to share anything? Then let's complete our day, and I will see you guys next week. Oh, did you want to say?
Share something? No, I just wanted to share my gratitude for this higher. Every time you talked about, you might get nuggets here, a little nugget there, a little nugget there, and that's the truth. And then all these little nuggets line up and direct us closer to understanding that we are God. So anyway, I just appreciate you, and I just wanted to say how grateful that I am.
Thank you, sweet sister. I so appreciate that. And I know all of you who've been participating in this for so long, I know that you guys receive, which is why it's so fun for me to give, because in the giving I receive, and you give me your attention and you receive nuggets. I give you nuggets and I receive the joy of having this transmitted through me. So what a beautiful circle. Thank you so much. So we will see you next week. And of course, if you're new to these transmissions, you can find them on my YouTube channel, Laina Orlando, and you'll find all 108 episodes there. All right, everybody. See you next week. Love you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.